This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, True Seekers and True Crime Junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I'd like to welcome to the show today, Nolan Del Campo.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. And Harriet Suchet.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. You'll like what we're starting out with this morning because I received another person's version of a solve, and it just made me kind of tickle. I was just looking it up. They were talking about the poison pen. They call it the dripping pen. It's known both ways, poison pen, dripping pen. Do we even know where poison pen came from, or was that something that you kind of came up with, Harriet, when you were talking about the actual device?
I do think. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Some background noise here.
It's okay. It's okay. So did you hear what I asked?
No.
Okay. So I had a YouTuber.
The ridiculous solve.
Yeah. So basically, G Scott 70s sent me a message on YouTube saying the dripping pen card is a 1-letter cipher. Turn the 7 into a Z with a slash of a pen. The Z will spin your head when you see the name hidden in the first letter of each month spells Jason. The D represents a dot and death. So I kept going. I don't think there's that many months written on that card. And I just looked it up just before we started the show. Of course, that letter does not indicate all the letters that this individual is trying to state are involved. In that dripping pen card, he had indicated December spelled with an S, July, August, September, October equals 7. So I'm not sure how he got Jason. I always am interested in how people's minds work when they think they've made a solve on something that doesn't quite make enough sense to me. But Jason, I then obviously presumed that we had a J month, an A month, an S month, an O month, and an N month, and that December was not supposed to be part of the equation because he says it represents something else. So I don't know where he got the N from, which is really kind of my problem because there is no November. There is I just read off the months that are listed on that particular communication, but I thought this would tickle you, Harriet. At first I was going to ask you to take a look at it and see whether or not it had any viability, but now as I look at it, I'm not really seeing much there. What do you think about that?
Well, I would love to take a look at it, but I've been focusing on the latest Zodiac suspect to make the rounds, even all the way into the San Francisco Chronicle.
Which
and
one?
It's an 86-year-old man. His name is John Treffel.
Yep.
And he's he's not
Go
the
ahead.
Zodiac. But what stands out to me is he's involved in I would say versions of mind control or mind altering drugs for patients in the schizophrenic world and hospitals. But he got in trouble. He lost his license in 1999 for trying to write a book about his one of his main patients that was getting stuff that they weren't supposed to have, and from what I understand, making them schizophrenic. Anyway, he's not the Zodiac. Yeah,
no, he clearly isn't.
Yeah,
I have to share on that one because yes, it's definitely very interesting. What's that?
No, I saw his picture, and the picture that they're trying to post and compare it with when he has black hair and a widow's peak is, I believe, 1972-ish, And that's not, it doesn't, I mean, we know Zodiac's comparison and composites were 68, 69, whatever. So he's not the Zodiac.
All right, so I'll share mine because I'm usually getting the insight from other people. Nolan, you're one of my best patrons that will hang the net. Did you see? They've got another suspect out there. This one actually came from my brother, who is a CHP officer in California. His wife had known this girl, I guess, in high school. And so she had started seeing her feeds that were coming up on Facebook. So he got all into it and started reading it. And it looks like it could be part of the group, blah, blah, blah. So I finally had an opportunity yesterday to go and read some of the things that are on this girl's post. The one thing I want to point out is that there is an article listed by a Stephanie Panis. All she did was merely post the link for Mendocino County Sheriff's Department, in which case they have cleared this guy of DNA, even from the murders and the information. So they stated he had some information in regards to it, but he was basically wrong in other aspects. They have looked into him. They have, I guess, tested DNA. They found that it was not a match. And they've stated they've not found anything that holds any credibility that this girl is saying. So I took a look at the picture that you're talking about, and it states that he was born in 1939. That would make him roughly barely 30 years of age at the Zodiac happenings, which I feel is just a bit young, especially when we know that they discussed 35 to 45, and they talked about having a sagging neck and stuff like that, that this 30-year-old obviously does not have in his and I want to say it was a medical ID card that they were actually putting up with his face on it. And while there is some similarity, we have to pay attention to how young he looks at this time. And of course, again, he also has to be responsible for more than just the Zodiac. He has to be responsible for Sherry Jo Bates. That would put him around 23, something like that. But I think he's in medical school at this time. So
yeah, in Chicago, I think.
So, I think so. Yes.
Sorry.
No. And they stated that he was consistently flying back to California over his jealousies of his of the girl that he was in love with, which is this girl, the girl who's posting this stuff on Facebook. It's her mother. But then I also saw some crazy posts from some other people saying, yeah, the crazy stuff you were posting last time. Kind of reminded me of a Deborah Perez instance, right? One year she's the daughter of the Zodiac, and the year before she was the love child of JFK and Marilyn Monroe. You can't really go both directions.
Yes.
Look at me.
Yeah, look what I can do.
Yeah, I'm trying not to laugh myself. It's just ridiculous, but well,
what was even more interesting,
that his brother.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I say real quickly? His brother is a dentist, from what I understand, this guy Treffel, and has allegedly 50 books out, but he's located historically next to Naperville, Illinois. And I'm like, that's OCCK era stuff. But but I think he's still considered to be the brother, a dentist. Well, I don't know. I think he'd be too old to be a dentist now, but I was like, this is a little coincidental for me to see things that I'm familiar with, Naperville, Illinois, and Chicago. Oh God, I can go on and on, but he's definitely not the Zodiac.
Well, I thought what was interesting is that many people were commenting on the fact that it looks as though she's attempting to write a book. So basically what she's rolled out on yes, it does. What she's rolled out onto Facebook does not look like, this innocent daughter trying to out her father, claims that he wants to give locations of bodies, but then turns around and says, oh, but it's a heavily wooded area with redwood roots, and it's going to be too hard to dig up, and imaging machines just won't work. So while she says there'll be evidence there, she then downplays it to the degree of saying that it's not really going to be easy to find. And then I think at the end of the Mendocino, that link for Stephanie Panis and the article from Mendocino Sheriff's Department had indicated that they wanted to actually speak to him. And both her, and I don't know if it's a sister or another girl that she's working with on this, both indicated that he won't have anything to do with cops. Well, then he's not really looking to give a deathbed confession.
Yeah.
They're looking for a book deal.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're
doing. Writing a book on his patient. He was writing a book on his patient, trying to create. That's what cost him his license. So but it's reminding me of Tom Voigt's website, where everybody had a book on the Zodiac, and that's what they were pushing, and they were looking for all book deals or and then the movie that they were pushing. So it is what it is.
The more mystery that they can cause by writing multiple books on people they know they don't even have the slightest amount of evidence on that would actually even cause them to be arrested, let alone convicted as the Zodiac killer, is really kind of their goal. And I kind of hoped that when you'd said once Jimmy Carter died, we were going to get some of this information. I did see that the JFK files dropped. I think about 60,000 of them on the FBI archives. The vault is what it's called. Have you seen any of those yet?
I've seen a number of them on Twitter/X, and they keep on bringing up something about control. They're trying to, in this 1967 one, they did files. And I'm like, isn't this like mind control? They're trying to control this. They're trying to control that. And then they posted a picture. A lot of them have posted a picture about George Bush Sr. being at Dallas.
He was. I've seen the picture. Him and Clinton, both young kids.
But
both of them there.
Well, senior too. But my point is, we know that because I've done dozens of them by now, saying that George Bush Jr. And Sr. were both involved with MK Ultra. They might not recall. There's a story from Roger Stone saying that he's calling BS that George Bush Sr. can't recall being there. And I'm pointing out, using mind control stuff he might not recall. But I'm
There's
seeing
a possibility.
bringing up about control. Yeah, so,
right.
that he was a part of something.
Okay.
Anyways, amazing.
I don't want to step back into the JFK era, but have you seen anything, or have you seen any of the documents, Nolan?
I have not yet. I've been too busy.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel. I know it is.
Actually, I will.
I would have thought you'd have deep dived. Problem is that reading it isn't the easiest thing to do because it's bound to be heavily redacted. So, of course, you have to put the pieces together, have the time to do that. And it's almost as if you have to sit there and go through everything that you can go through at one time, which is very exhausting. I don't want to climb down that road. It's not as important to me to know who and how many people were involved, just that America understands it was not a single bullet theory by Oswald, that we've been lied to this entire time. They act as though they're trying to be our friends. They want to put this information out. They say it's in the claim of transparency. But the problem is if we're not going to get the full story, if they don't want to just come out and say, look, this is exactly how many shots were fired. Look, this is how many people we believe that were involved, without us as Americans trying to take the time to read 60,000 documents, then are they really being transparent? Because a lot of people don't have the time to do that type of research or to deep dive into those documents.
And in the B, I think it was yesterday, maybe it was today, the story about the release of the Kennedy documents, it still maintained the theory that Oswald was the lone assassin, even with these. And that doesn't make sense because the Australian media and other media throughout the world have already come out and said that there was more than one shooter.
100%.
And that Oswald probably didn't even pull a trigger.
I didn't catch the gal's name that was doing the press.
Crazy.
I didn't catch the name of the gal that was doing the press release for the release of these documents on Trump's behalf, but she indicated she had just barely started in the reading of it, and it's already apparent there was at least 2 shooters. At least. So why are they still trying to feed? Go ahead, Harriet.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I'm saying it is more than one shooter, and there are people that are still alive that are connected. So that could be why they're like, let's put the brakes on, because this person is possibly connected somehow, and they're still around.
Well, and that's why that's why Trump said when he wanted to release
it. I think deserve to be indicted.
The what? Say that again, Nolan.
I think if these people are still around, I don't think it should matter. I think if they're culpable, then they should be held responsible.
100%. That's strict
Exactly.
transparency. There's no statute of limitations on murder, period. Like, do your
Yeah,
time.
To me, that's
You
a terrible reason not to release the information.
Exactly. And quite frankly, these individuals have lived a better part of their lives free, doing whatever it is that they wanted to do after committing this murder. And what that shows America, that only if you're at a lower level of society would you be held responsible and accountable for murdering somebody. It's just, yeah, it's too much. I'm not going to climb back into those documents, because again, all that matters to me is that we know that the Zodiac wrote a letter in regards to it. And what that tells me is that he was in the know. He knew people that knew what was going on, and he attempted to out that information on Jack Ruby, or Rubenstein, as his real name is called. I did actually see, though, that Belli, I was under the impression Belli was Jack Ruby's attorney. Was he one of them? Because I also
yes, there was a Texas guy
one of them.
first, but I think that's like three attorneys. But Belli became the main one.
Okay, because I did see them list in Lindsay McBrayer's information, listed a different attorney for him, and I went, wait a minute, have I had this wrong this whole time and telling the public the wrong thing? But no, I'm glad to hear you guys say that Belli, yes, is still wrapped up in the center of this. He also received a letter from the Zodiac, just like Dallas PD received in regards to JFK. So again, it all just kind of keeps everything in that realm. All right, let's get past this guy and his ridiculous solve, because honestly speaking, I can't make any sense of it. There's no N month. So where he pulled the N out of, I have no idea. And how he says the D represents a dot in death, it just means that D didn't fit into his name. So he had to figure out some other way to portray it. Bye-bye.
One quick point about Ruby and the Ruby trial and his incarceration and whatnot. Dorothy Kilgallen, the famous journalist, was the only one that ever interviewed Ruby during this time period. And she was planning to write a book on the Kennedy assassination, and then she got suicided.
Who did?
Dorothy Kilgallen.
Kilgallen. I think I remember you talking about that.
Yeah.
You mean self-homicided.
Yes. Yeah.
Which brings us to...
She's a woman who knew too much.
Yeah,
exactly.
And unfortunately, she got put 6 feet under.
Aww. Well, that brings us back. And I thought we were going to actually have Lindsay McBrayer here today, because the last document that we started to talk about last week was in regards to research she was doing when she was looking up the Wetterling abduction. And I'm not sure if he was killed or not. Do you remember Wetterling? It was a child.
Yeah.
Period. Did you have anything that came out about him?
Well, for Jacob Wetterling, as an adult, that's where it really caught my attention about true crime, because of how they were sensationalizing his abduction. I honestly can't exactly remember the date, but I just thought it was amazing how they were, asking the public's help. Please call this number, blah, blah, blah. I think it was before the internet. So, Jacob Wetterling stands up a lot, and he's in the Minnesota area, if I remember correctly.
So is he still alive, or?
I'd love to. I think he was found deceased. I'm trying to remember. Did they arrest somebody? But he was, I think, one of the first sensationalized modern kidnappings of children, and it's like it's almost as weird, almost as horrible as it sounds. It became like a blueprint how to sensationalize these stories of kids missing, and then eventually, of course, do a lot of TV shows, radio shows, newspapers, and this was a real person that got kidnapped, and a real person that did it.
Well, this particular document is where she claims in the research and files on this particular abduction, and I think it is an unsolved murder. She found this particular document that lists basically a diagram of those that are involved in the underground trafficking of children. And of course, the top right-hand corner has an asterisk as if this is the philosophy that is overlooking this entire group, or it almost looks like they've mapped out a multi-level marketing scheme to me, because it's literally a flow chart of how these individuals interact. And it says with an asterisk, Dorian philosophy. So Dorian philosophy, for those who do not know, were one of the 4 major ethnic groups in which the Hellenes of classical Greece divided themselves. They were almost always referred to as just the Dorians, as they are called in the earliest literary mention of them in the Odyssey, where they already can be found inhabiting the island of Crete. Now, the Dorians believed in child lovers. So basically, they're stating that this goes all the way back to Greece at a very, very early time. And then it starts out with the porno shops being on top. And then, of course, that reaches out to a direct mail that goes and feeds downward into Today Bear Club ads, which I couldn't really find anything on that person, the Advocate ads, and other underground papers. When I looked up the Advocate, this is what I came up with. It says the Advocate is an American LGBTQ magazine printed bi-monthly and available by subscription. The Advocate brand also includes a website. Both magazines and websites have an editorial focus on news, politics, opinion, and arts and entertainment of interests to the lesbian, gay men, bisexuals, transgender, and queer people. The magazine, established in 1967, is the oldest and largest LGBTQ publication in the United States and the only surviving one of its kind that was found before the 1969 Stonewall riots in Manhattan, an uprising that was a major milestone in the LGBTQ rights movement. On June 9th, 2022, Pride Media was acquired by Equal Entertainment, LLC. So when I looked up to see where when we get into these individuals that are happening in here, a majority of all of this is happening right here in California. So it does show that this is based, the Advocate is based in Los Angeles, California. We see a nice picture here of Hillary Clinton, the Advocate interview. And of course, we know how the Democrats seem to perpetuate or want to push rights, which I think we should all have rights. It shouldn't be a Republican versus Democrat. We are all people on this earth, and we are all allowed to live our lives exactly the way we want to without any restrictions or stifling from anybody else. But I did find it interesting that they actually list her interview and her face on the cover of the magazine that's found on the Wikipedia site. This then goes off to the right from underneath the Bear Club ads, the Advocate ads, and other underground papers, moves off to the right into what one, I couldn't really make out the top portion of it, but it does say other SM deviations. So I'm thinking that has to do with other types of sexual fetishes. Then off to the right, it extends out to what they said was the adult homosexuality. So there must be two sides here, both adults that do not claim the homosexual side, and then the adult homosexuality, which then feeds into the pedophilia gay community. So this is moving outward, and then we're going to see this all drop down into some very interesting stuff. What I wanted to mention as I came up on it, and I'm not sure, let's see. Oh, well, because we had the Advocate, who's represented in this particular diagram as being somebody who is, I'm guessing what they're actually doing is putting out articles or maybe some type of messages that allows people to figure out and find how to enter these realms of child trafficking. At least that's what this particular diagram is implicating. So that fed into, which we know was a child trafficking scheme, especially since I saw Hillary Clinton on the front of the magazine, leads us to Bill Clinton being seen with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it shows this. What's that?
And just Lane.
Yes, and Giselle Lane.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it I found an article that I was looking at, which this is why I was really anticipating that that Lindsay would be here, is that this one actually mentions somebody that we just talked about in the last couple weeks in her research. So basically it says from Reagan to Trump, and this is an article in which they're writing in regards to connections to Epstein. It includes Rupert Murdoch, Alan Dershowitz, Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, and Roy Cohn, and Ronald Reagan. So Roy Cohn was one of the individuals we were talking about in regards to, I think that he was either the mob's attorney, she was saying, but he was responsible, I think, for introducing these groups and these people together. Either way, they've found some connection between all of these people and Jeffrey Epstein. Now, we do see that Bill Clinton denies visiting Epstein Island, but I'm looking at this picture here and they're looking pretty tore back. This was definitely not a business meeting. What do you mean?
He's in the blue dress and everybody says it hung at Epstein Island. Okay.
I don't know anything about the blue dress, but it's funny he's wearing a blue shirt in this picture when you said that. I'm like, why do you call it a dress? But they're both looking pretty tore back. I mean, obviously Epstein's over here in a yellow sweatshirt. His hair's kind of all muffed up on the other end. They both look like they have been partying all night long. So I thought that was interesting to say. I've never spent time with this person. Well, this does not look like a business meeting to me.
Yeah.
And that takes us into the next level of this particular diagram. And of course, I've put the advocates ad at top because now that directly feeds outward and down into the California mail receiver. Trying to see, I cannot see what that says. Some of this is very blurry and I wish I had a much better version of it, but what I can see is that in the top portions that feed directly down from the advocate ads, it goes into pedophilia and pederasty, child sexuality circle Inc. I don't believe I really found anything on that one. In California, though, it says California. And then it talks, I've got all these little circles that are going on here, and it's talking about the members feeding into or probably feeding out of. So it's pointing out that the members of these organizations are involved with this child trafficking ring. There was also Hermes of Chicago. They look like a distribution hub, also a magazine for different types of clothing, or I don't know. Let's see. I showed it down here, which I thought was interesting. This was in the 1970s, and it was an ad that was ran by Hermes, and you can actually see the word Playboy right up in the number 7. I went, huh.
Is all this writing, is it Lindsay's writing?
No. This was found in the Wetterling files, the FBI FOIA files. And so she pulled this up. It looks as though somebody, either a snitch, what's a better word for an informant? Either an informant or a suspect is put this diagram together in order to show how the child trafficking ring is ran. So that moves into pedophilia and pederasty organized network. So that's what they're calling this. Excuse me. And then from the California mail receiver, it goes down into ads and then down into a mailing list and down into something. Well, we're going to get to the BLM here in a second. But I was able to make out European network, and then we'll talk about those European networks that are involved. But there was a Renee Guyon Society, Inc. in California that's listed in here. So I looked up the Ray Guyon Society, Inc. in California, and it says the Renee Guyon Society was an American organization that advocated sexual relationships with children. Most investigators considered it a one-man propaganda operation. It was named after Renee Guyon, a former judge, who served on the Supreme Court of Thailand. That caught my attention because this is where John Mark Carr absconded to when he left and skated out on his pedophilia charges. He immediately went to Thailand, Malaysia and Thailand. So who served on the Supreme Court of Thailand for 30 years and who, apart from traditional judicial work, wrote on sexual ethics in his work, The Ethics of Sexual Acts. My mouth isn't even meant to say these words because they're referring to children, and this is just disgusting.
Well, I think it's legal in Thailand. I think if you're 14 or over, I think that there's prostitutes and stuff that are in their teens in Thailand.
Well, I'm pretty sure that there's young prostitutes here in America as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
But it being legal and being right, and if this judge is on the Supreme Court, I'm sure he could make the laws so he didn't break them. I mean, that's what we've been talking about, the mob and mafia all along, politicians, all of these rich people who run monopolies over us all across the United States because they make those laws so they don't break them.
Yeah.
But that's disgusting. And it says Hermes became a global logistics operator. So, again, interesting information from these individuals. So then that spills into the center, which almost looks like the center to me. And again, it's one of those places I can barely read what's being said, but it says B.L.M. And then it says Liberation Magazine. That's as much as I could make out of that. The European network includes French, German, a word I can't read, Holland, and Greek. Then it moves from porno shops from something called FDS Author, Lone Star, I think it says, moves upward into a California publisher, Surrey House. So they've listed Surrey House in here. Some of the other names that I could actually read from it was DS Photography, Swapper, Arizona, Boys, an unknown word, Texas, Boys Farm in Tennessee, Children's Nudist Camp in Vermont, Church of the New Revelation, Inc. equals sets up boys' homes, camps, and etc. The BLM, the magazine, so it's basically coming out of BLM into a magazine and then to the Mail-O-Matic operations. So I was able to look up Surrey House and the Mail-O-Matic operations. Surrey House listed this. From this collection of gay pulp fiction spans 5 decades, 1940s to 1980s, and includes the works of several prominent gay writers. Among these are James Barr, Quatrefoil, and Phil Andros, The Gay Weekly. Publishers represented within the collection included Greenleaf, Phoenix, Spade Classics, Blue Boy, Eros, Gay Parisian Press, Star Distributors, Surrey, and Traveler's Companions. The bulk of the collection consists of gay pulps, paperback books printed using wood pulp paper, also included. And this was also out of San Diego, California. So we've got a couple entities that are working out of Southern California. And then the mass mail service provider from Canada, US, and international is Mail-O-Matic. Mail-O-Matic provides companies and organizations of all North American industry sectors with highly stressful direct marketing solutions and mailing services. Since our beginnings in 1967, we continue to lead the mailing house service industry with our balanced combination of personalized one-on-one. Very interesting. Does anybody have any comments on any of those industries I've just...
No comment here.
Did you say green? I'm sorry. Did you say Greenleaf?
I think I did. Hold on. Yes.
Yeah.
Within the collection include
Greenleaf. I think that's the hospital that is sections of a whole bunch of hospitals by Greenleaf something that has to do with Dan Page, who was running a whole bunch of psychiatric hospitals. That has to do with the 1988 McDonald's Zodiac Communications. And this guy, Dan Page, was into programming and deprogramming people, but ran a whole bunch of hospitals, basically in the South. But that's what I'm finding interesting, the name Greenleaf. Is there a connection there somewhere,
I feel like I've heard of Greenleaf as well. I don't know if I could attribute it to anything. How about you, Nolan?
No familiarity.
Yeah. All right, that takes us into the next level, which is basically the downward movement of these communications, or should I say ads, want ads or solicitations for child trafficking. Again, some of the names that I could pull out of here was it should have said ministers, licenses, legal assistants, alt incarcerators, Walnut Creek home, Europe services, the Reverend Grossman youth something or other, clients, 8mm motion picture distributors from San Francisco, DK Photography in Washington, LK Pontiac, JT Detroit is the boyfriend of somebody I can't make out, just says PM, Wayne State, Big Brothers Ann, and Cranbrook Institute. So that does fall back in line with hospitals, as you were indicating. And we know that psychiatric hospitals were definitely being used through the MK Ultra program, as well as prisons, universities. So I wasn't shocked to see Wayne State in there. But let's give you a little bit of information. Wayne State University is in, where did we find it? This is Detroit, Michigan. Which we know OCCK.
My God, OCCK.
Yeah. Cranbrook Institute of Science is also in Michigan. So it seems that this tends to be a more Michigan side, because Wayne State and Cranbrook Institute are both on the right-hand side of this diagram. And it says that Cranbrook Institute of Science, let's see, celebrating Shamrock Science Day with St. Patrick's Day around the corner. The day is designed to celebrate curiosity, discovery, and includes, I guess I didn't really pull much up other than I was able to identify Cranbrook Institute and its location, which would happen to be in Michigan. Really disgusting that we've got a reverend. I want to say that it says, it almost looks like it starts DYG something, but I can make out Grossman, and it says youth, and then there's another word underneath it again that I can't make out, but being responsible for setting up homes and camps and other things as well for young boys. Just disgusting. When I get into the last level of this particular one, I'm interested in seeing that it actually says, where did I find that one in here? Oh, right here in the dead center of the bottom right-hand corner. And it reaches out to about, let's see, 10 other individuals or institutions. But in the center of that, it says Charlevoix. You can make out Charlevoix like nobody's business all day long. Now, we understand that we've got everything in Charlevoix, which is really kind of the John Benet Ramsey's home. We've got the nuclear power plant picture of Jack Terrence while he's in Michigan. So again, this puts things back into Michigan, revolving around much of the same things. I want to say that the Ocean Institute Inc. is listed on here, though there's another word in there, so I wasn't able to look that one up. Rocky Mountain, North Carolina, Smith was the operator of this place. Better Life Monthly is out of Beverly Hills, California. Barry Wright is a known alias, but it doesn't say for who. FES uses a PO box, maybe a forwarding service out of San Francisco. So again, now this person is trying to indicate how they're continuing to move this type of information, but they've listed San Francisco again. And then it says over in parentheses on the bottom of this. So he must have continued on with this particular cycle of how this information is being fed or solicited to individuals and members of these organizations on the other side of this. But I do not have the over or the other side to be able to determine what that said. And that's kind of where I was going to conclude everything with Lindsay McBrayer. I did have her information on here. You can find her on Rumble, on YouTube, on TikTok. Her name is Real Truth, Real Justice. So if you want to look her up on YouTube or TikTok, it is at Real Truth, Real Justice. And on rumble.com, it is just Real Truth, Real Justice. So thank you, Lindsay McBrayer, for bringing all of this to light. I think this was a very interesting segue in light of Adam Walsh's passing and the involvement of John Walsh with the individuals that we see that are being now named inside of much of the child trafficking stuff, including with Epstein.
Mm-hmm.
Can I
take a deep breath?
You mentioned MK Ultra. That reminds me, I just finished my book on the Symbionese Liberation Army and Donald Freeze and mind control and Patty Hearst and all that. Well, the biggest revelation I found in that book too, that the SLA may have been a CIA MK Ultra project to discredit the left-wing movement, the progressive movement in the United States, especially in Northern California. But also, it alleges Patty Hearst had conjugal visits with Donald DeFreeze when he was in Vacaville and when he was at Soledad. So they had a prior relationship before the kidnapping.
What?
Crazy, yeah. Wild.
So DeFreeze was
that's totally not what we were talking about, but I had to get it out.
No, but DeFreeze was in prison and she was visiting him there?
Yes, because he was he started out as an informant in L.A., a petty criminal and an informant. Then he finally got sent to prison. He ended up in Vacaville. He became a subject of mind control by Dr. Colin Westbrook, who ran various organizations at Vacaville prison, and they all involved mind control. Well, DeFreeze is one of his pet projects. And so DeFreeze, in turn, became a snitch there at the prison, and he got special privileges, one of which was conjugal visits with people that weren't his wife.
Well, Manson was in Tehachapi as well, correct?
Well, Manson did time in Tehachapi. He also did time in Vacaville, too.
Well, Vacaville is Tehachapi.
No, it's not.
It's not?
No, Vacaville is Northern California. Tehachapi is down by Bakersfield.
Oh, okay. My uncle worked at both. My uncle worked at both locations as as a correctional officer, ultimately making lieutenant, acting captain during his stays at different prisons. But he was actively stationed at Vacaville while Manson was there, and he was his warden, basically, if you will. He was the one that spent most of the time with and watching over Manson. Why would Manson be given an individual officer to watch over him? That kind of always boggled me.
Yeah, and we're thinking about that too. I used to do parole hearings for people that had committed life crimes, and one of the places I would go was Vacaville. And so eventually, if I kept doing it, eventually I was going to represent Manson one of his parole hearings. But I ended up, they were just too heavy duty to do. And I felt they were unsafe too, because they leave you in a room with someone that's committed or attempted murder, committed a various life crime. And the cops didn't care about me. The guards did not care about me one bit.
Right. Nope, you go in, you are bait.
They treated me like a criminal. I was just a lawyer.
Right. Well, that's because they didn't like them, and anybody probably associating with them, they were going to make up their minds they didn't like that either.
Yeah, they just didn't like my whole role. That's an advocate.
Very high school stuff. I see that Lindsay has just joined us now at this point. We have already concluded the diagram that was listing all of the child pedophilia or trafficking rings. Is there anything that you wanted to add about that particular diagram, Lindsay?
Just that people don't really know how big it is and who all is really involved in this includes very high officials within government, and I think he was just talking about in the police network, it's everywhere. It's literally infiltrated everywhere. Yeah.
I have just recently learned of a child pedophilia ring in California, in which case a mental health hospital and the law enforcement has been stated to be involved. So basically the concern is that the children are being brought in by law enforcement, housed at the mental health facility, and then moved to these particular parties where they are then being sexually trafficked by the individuals involved. So
I will add something to that. That's the same way that they traffic children from CPS as well.
I wouldn't doubt it. That's the easiest way to get them. Right?
Yep. A lot of times there are judges, lawyers, DAs, law enforcement that are peripherally involved in a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Involved sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, they're the ones that have the authority to take the children, so it's easy.
Exactly. And travel with them without being questioned.
Yeah.
If the average person tries to kidnap a kid, try to drive them across the state line. I'm sure they're screaming out a window somewhere like, somebody save me. In the back of a police car, they're probably scared to death.
Yeah. And then, even if the child is acting, crazy or, off or something, then they're still not going to be really questioned if they're with a police officer. He's fine. He's just having a, he's just scared or whatever. Like, they can just make up an excuse easily and then get away with it, like, right away.
And I could see most of them probably a little bit even discombobulated about what's occurring, not even realizing where they may or may not be traveling to, not questioning anything that's, happening, just keeping their mouth shut because maybe they're afraid that they just got busted for prostitution or something that would cause them to kind of just behave until they get to wherever they're going, and not even aware of the fact that they're being taken to this location and what they're about to be put through. Yeah. Either way, disgusting. I do know that particular cell has been reported to the FBI. I hope that they are not involved in any way and that they're going to actively investigate and bust these people, because again, this is just a disgusting display of adult abuse.
Yeah. Well, I think that the FBI in the past was involved in it, but as we can see now, we have different people within that field now. So I think that they would take charge of it.
I would hope so. And hopefully they're the outliers. There's somebody that would get involved. Kind of like the FBI agents working with Dennis on this. The only people to have taken notice and to actively, or at least claim they were actively investigating the stuff that Dennis was bringing them in regards to Jack being the Zodiac. There are good people out there. I know that Mitzi Roberts out of the LAPD, she desperately wanted to investigate the information we provided her, and she was stifled and shut down. So there are people that will, but when it comes right down to it, if your superior officer tells you no or you're going to be fired, you're probably going to cling to your job, and it doesn't make you an assistant involved or culpable in any way with these crimes, that you are literally being ran by the force above you, and there's nothing you can do about that.
That's like this what happened with the John Ramsey case, and one of their officers. He was a legitimate officer that wanted to go the right direction and do the right thing, and they shut him down every time. He wrote a book, and I just got done with it a couple months ago.
What's his name?
I can't think of it at the top of my head, but I will definitely put it in the comments.
Not Lou Smith, right?
No, no, he was one of those.
So it wasn't the police officer
to throw people off. But I don't even think he knew it himself, Lou. I think Lou legitimately thought he was doing the right thing, but I think he did. Other options that they wanted to use.
So you're not talking about the police officer that the Ramseys sued over creating bad press. Okay, yes. So why do you think he was a good cop?
Yes, him.
I think he's a good cop because obviously he's. I heard him speak on the topic, and he was trying to push for the parents for being culpable for the crime that they had been cleared for. He even failed to recognize that they'd been cleared from DNA in January, less than a month after John Benet Ramsey's death. So why would you think he was a good cop looking for the truth?
I think that because I think the Ramseys are involved, but not physically.
Well, I don't think any of these, but I think these people are being controlled. I think what it is that they know exactly why somebody has been taken from them. They know exactly why they're being controlled and what they've done to cause that. But I don't think that they're involved. I don't think that they're culpable. I just think they're not willing to out these other individuals for fear of their own lives.
Yeah. Well, and that's ultimately why he resigned, because he kept, they did him really wrong within his job. Like, they wouldn't let him do certain things. They would control like how he wanted to run the investigation.
Well, yeah, he's trying to blame the parents for something that they had been cleared from, at least to the degree of their active participating in the murder. I don't.
In his book, it brings you like it brings you to his almost like you're in his shoes. And he
got sued. Yeah, I mean, let's face it. He got sued by Ramsey's because of the defamation, and the Ramsey won. So there had to be a certain amount of sensationalism, untruth, mystery thrown in there, things that he's just, wantonly, throwing out there that he could be sued for, because there was evidently an ability for the Ramseys to win in that particular case. Well, that kind of gives us just our last few seconds here at this point. I want to thank Nolan and Harriet and Lindsay. Lindsay, if you want to give a shout out to your URLs real quick, go ahead and do that.
Real Truth, Real Justice is for TikTok and YouTube. And then for Twitter, it's Lindsay Nicole. So just put the
Perfect.
@ and then Lindsay Nicole for Twitter. And then the @ Real Truth, Real Justice for TikTok and YouTube.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for everything you brought to the show, Lindsay. And I'm sure that we will cross paths again, especially as we get into the John Benet Ramsey stuff. Thank you, Nolan, for being here, and Harriet for being here. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next Friday.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.